Welcome to Will It Build, the series where I take your builds from my YouTube comments and Discord server and put them to the test to see if they are the real deal. If it's solid, then I'll gift you 1,000 silver, and if it's really something special, you'll be featured in a dedicated build video for your submitted build. So comment yours below so we can answer the question, will it build? Welcome to another episode of Will It Build, your favorite build series on all of YouTube. Today we are taking a look at the newly reworked Hunter exotic chess piece, Raiju's Harness, which is all focused around the Gathering Storm super now and getting Gathering Storm as much as frequently possible. So today I have crafted a build that I think is going to work decently well, might even be inclined to say really well, with this newly reworked Raiju's Harness. That's main goal is to really have you throwing Gathering Storms as much as humanly possible. Looking at the brand new Raiju's Harness, this exotic chess piece used to allow you to cancel like the deflect on your Arc Staff super. It was kind of useless. Now it's been changed so that activating Gathering Storm calls down lightning on all nearby targets, jolting them while also amplifying allies, and, which in my opinion is the main important piece here, defeating Arc debuffed targets grants a small amount of Gathering Storm energy. And when we're saying Arc debuff targets, that's of course going to be targets that are blinded or targets that are jolted. I also want to specify that that is an arc blind and not something like a blinding grenade launcher. Remember, the blinding grenade launcher, blinding grenades got changed to disorienting. So stuff like disorienting will not work for this. It'll have to specifically be the arc blind. So what are we putting together for this? Obviously, we're going to be on the arc subclass. That's the only way we can access the Gathering Storm super. And what I've got put together here is basically what I'm going through in my mind is we just want to be debuffing, arc debuffing, jolting, blinding as many enemies as humanly possible so we constantly get that bonus super energy for our Gathering Storm so we can really be spamming it as much as possible. For aspects, we're going to start off with Ascension, where we can consume our class ability while we're airborne to do our little spin. It's going to amplify us and it's going to jolt all nearby targets. So that's way number one, that we can debuff enemies with an arc debuff. Number two is we're going with Flow State, where defeating a jolted target makes us amplified. We don't really care that much about that at all, to be completely honest, because we're already becoming amplified anytime we cast Ascension. But what we really care about is the second part of Flow State, where while we are amplified, our dodge recharges more quickly. The reason we care about that a lot is because the cooldown of our Ascension aspect, which we can use to constantly jolt stuff and reapply amplification to ourselves, this is tied to the cooldown of our dodge. For that reason, we are also going to be going with Marksman's dodge as opposed to Gambler's dodge, as it has a lower base cooldown and will allow us to more frequently proc Ascension, or use Ascension rather. We're not really ever going to be using our dodge in and of itself, so we're never going to be doing like the actual Marksman's dodge or the actual Gambler's dodge. We're just using it as a conduit to get off as many Ascensions as humanly possible. As such, we want the cooldown on it to be as short as humanly possible. As far as the rest of the setup goes, we're going with the Pulse Grenade, and the reason we're going with the Pulse Grenade is because we are also pairing this up with the Spark of Shock Fragment, where our arc grenades are going to jolt targets. Again, another way to debuff enemies. And the reason I'm going with Pulse Grenade here is because, in my opinion, one, it's the best damage grenade for the arc subclass, and two, it's very easy to hit multiple enemies because it has a pretty decently sized area of effect. The angle here is that we can throw our pulse grenade. It'll do a decent amount of damage to tankier enemies. It'll kill less tanky enemies, but anything it touches and damages, it will jolt, so we get that bonus super energy towards our Gathering Storm through Raiju's Harness. We're also going with Disorienting Blow. Typically, you see people go with Combination Blow on an Arc Hunter. We're changing things up a little bit today because, as we said before, we're not really focused on using our class ability to refund our melee. We're not really using it to dodge at all or anything like that. We're using our class ability exclusively for Ascension for all the reasons that we listed previously. So as such, I want to try this out with Disorienting Blow, where anytime we hit a target, it's going to blind them. Again, another way to arc debuff targets, so we get the Raiju's Harness proc for bonus super energy. As far as the rest of the fragments go, I'm going with the Spark of Resistance, so we can have a little bit more resilience when we're playing close range, which is going to be necessary to a certain degree if we want to make the most out of Ascension and jolting everything. We're also going with the Spark of Ions, where anytime we defeat a jolted target, we create an Ionic Trace, and when we scoop up that Ionic Trace, it's going to give us grenade energy, melee energy, and class ability energy, which all three of which are going to allow us to arc debuff enemy targets to get more Raiju's Harness procs. And then what I think is really going to be the ace here is the Spark of beacons, where while we are amplified, which again is pretty much always, your arc special or heavy ammo weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. And the reason I think this is going to be really, really solid here is because in terms of weaponry, we're pairing this build up with the Thunderlord exotic machine gun. This basically means that anytime we're amplified and we get a kill with the Thunderlord, it's going to create a explosion that blinds everything else that is nearby. You obviously don't have to use Thunderlord. You can use any arc heavy weapon that you like. You can use any arc special weapon, in fact, for that matter, to get mileage out of this spark of beacons. But generally speaking, Thunderlord is an exceptional ad clearing weapon. And I think for the purposes of this build, where we're trying to get as many final blows on arc debuff targets as possible, I think Thunderlord's just going to fit in the fold really, really nice. If you're in a situation where maybe you're on the second encounter of Vesper's Host, or maybe you want, maybe you want to focus a little bit more on boss damage, I think you could go with some other options, such as things like Anarchy, things like Wardcliff Coil, things like Legend of Acreus. You don't necessarily have to stick with Thunderlord the entire time. You can go other options that are going to play a little bit better into your DPS rotations. But I think generally speaking, for things more so like Grandmaster Nightfalls, Onslaught, things of that nature, you're going to want to go with the Thunderlord angle, and we will showcase that in today's build video. The other weapon that I'm going to recommend you prioritize is anything with Volt Shot, for obvious reasons. Now, not only can all of our abilities arc debuff targets, but now our weapons can as well. I'm going with the Oversoul Edict for this one from Crota's End. I've crafted it with Demolitionist and Volt Shot. Demolitionist, obviously, so I can get as much grenade energy back as humanly possible, so I can spam pulse grenades. But you really can go with literally whatever Volt Shot weapon you want. Another perk that I think is particularly interesting is a brand new perk that was just introduced in the season called Jolting Feedback, which you can get on the new seasonal pulse rifle called Vantage Point, where dealing repeated damage with this weapon inflicts jolt. It's honestly basically like Volt Shot, except you don't have to get a kill and then reload after the kill to ready up the jolt. You just have to spam fire at the same thing. I unfortunately don't have a weapon with jolting feedback. If you do, I would highly recommend you try it. I think it would probably feel really good with this build. As I do not have one yet, though, I'm going to be sticking with a Volt Shot weapon for this episode. As far as mods go for this build, things are a little interesting when it comes to our mod selections, specifically our mod selections that have anything to do with class ability activation. And the reason for that is because since we're not actually using our class ability, we're instead using Ascension to consume our class ability charge, a lot of the mods that would typically work with class ability usage don't actually work with this build. Things like Distribution, Outreach, Bomber, Reaper don't actually proc since we're not technically using our class ability. What does work, however, though, is a double set of utility kickstart, because the way utility kickstart is worded is that when your class ability energy is fully expended, not when you use your class ability. Down on the boots, I like going with an Absolution and an Innervation for ability regeneration on orb pickup in conjunction with a Harmonic Scavenger, so that whatever arc heavy weapon we're using, those heavy bricks are going to give us significantly more ammo. On the chest piece, Concussive Dampener and resistances of your choice. Down on the gloves, I like going with a Harmonic Loader for our arc heavy weapon and our Volt Shot weapon, as well as a Firepower mod for Orbs of Power on grenade final blows, and Bolstering Detonation for class ability energy regeneration when we cause damage with that grenade. And then up on the helmet, Harmonic Siphon for arc weapon double kills, giving us Orbs of Power, Heavy Ammo Finder for more heavy ammo, and Ashes to Assets, so that not only do our grenade final blows create Orbs of Power, but they also give us bonus super energy in conjunction with the bonus super energy that we'll get from Raiju's Harness through the grenades. In terms of seasonal artifact mods, I'm not personally going with any seasonal artifact mods because I do want this build to stand the test of time, but if you really wanted to, you could look into Retinal Burn, where rapid arc weapon precision hits consume an armor charge to blind the target, and if you use a tonic with this seasonal artifact, blinding a target will also emit a blinding burst to blind more targets. Probably make it a little better. I'm kind of allergic to tonics, though. They kind of hurt my brain and confuse me, so I just kind of pretend like they don't exist. We've got the build all put together with stat prioritizations of mobility, resilience, discipline, and I would love to get a little bit more intellect. I'm only at 2, which is not great, but I'm playing the hand I'm dealt. I guess this is the stat armor that I have, so it is what it is. Now we're starting off this Will It Build episode in a peculiar place, because I'm very, very curious to see how the added AoE of Raiju's Harness in conjunction with Gathering Storm performs on an AoE DPS boss, such as the first boss in the new Vesper's Host dungeon, the 10 Servitors in a Trench Coat. boss. I can't remember the actual name of it. Radix, I think is what it is. As such, we're going to be starting out with Wardcliff Coil as well, as that's going to be a lot better for a DPS phase versus Thunderlord. We'll do a DPS phase or two to see how it feels. I'm just really curious to see what it looks like. And then we're probably going to hop into Onslaught with 2 people from the live stream, twitch.tv/Mactics, and check this build out with Thunderlord to see how quickly we can truly get our super. Right out the gate, I kind of just want to see how quickly I can get my super. So I think our very first test is just going to be ripping our Gathering Storm. Wait, how did I just get 50% of it back? Is that supposed to happen? That's the exotic? That's how it works? Are you telling me Raiju's harness basically gives me... Does it work the same way as like Shards of Galanor, basically? Inconsistently refunds up to 50% super energy according to Dim. Dude, I didn't even know that. So that's not even listed in-game on the perk description. We're about to get a lot more Gathering Storms off than originally anticipated. So I can just throw it at that guy. Okay, that time I didn't get like any super energy back. Do I have to wait for it to... Okay, that time I got nothing. Is anyone else confused, or is this just a me thing? 6, 9. Really? If that doesn't warrant a like and subscribe, I don't know what does. So another thing we want to focus on as well is reloading as much as humanly possible after we get kills with this weapon to make sure that we're proccing Jolt, or Volt Shot rather, as much as humanly possible. I say as much as humanly possible a lot, don't I? Apparently I say rock and roll a lot as well, which I didn't realize. But I remember there's a stretch where like on my videos, everyone was always commenting, it's time to rock and roll or something like that. Apparently I have a ton of like catchphrases that I say a ridiculous amount and I just didn't realize I say them. Okay, so we'll blow that up. Shoot this. Gathering Storm. Maybe hit a little dodge. Damage is okay. I wouldn't say it's anything it's not bad for solo, to be honest. Especially in an encounter like this. Like, honestly, I feel like the damage here sometimes feels a little RNG. I feel like it can be a little hit or miss. Let's just go one more phase and just see. Let's see how we're feeling. I'm considering making a couple mod tweaks as well, now that I'm in the thick of it, because this build really does promote playing at close ranges to make sure that your Ascension is jolting as many enemies as possible. Let's get that Gathering Storm off. Okay, so boom, right? So it feels like it's the initial impact of throwing the super. It feels like the initial super energy gains that we received is determined by how many enemies are killed by the initial impact of throwing the spear. That's kind of what I'm feeling right now. Getting back to my healing and HP thoughts. I'm feeling a little squishy, especially considering that, like, we really do want to be close up. So I think, like, a better already mod or a recuperation mod or something of that nature would really feel nice to kind of help keep our health bar nice and high. Try debuffing the targets before popping Gathering Storm and see if that gets more consistent energy back. So yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. So right now we're gonna kind of bait everything to us. We'll hit the Ascension to jolt everything, and then I think my Ascension actually might have killed everything. Whoops. Don't you hate it when a build just does too much damage? Grab that. I think I messed up my rotation a little bit. I also think did I miss my Gathering Storm? I think I messed up my rotation. I think I missed my Gathering Storm. We're gonna chalk that one up to user error. But it's completely okay because this build is very much accomplishing what my goal with the build was, which is get Gathering Storm off as frequently as possible, which is definitely happening. I mean, we're getting our super ridiculously fast. So I kind of want to transition slightly into picking up 2 folks from the live stream at twitch.tv/Mactics, switching over to the Thunderlord variant of the build to see if we get our super even more quickly, because we're going to be getting a lot more mileage out of the Spark of Beacons, since we're going to be doing a bit more ad clear with our arc heavy weapon, whereas we weren't really doing that quite as much. Okay, so here, lightning strikes refund super energy per arc debuffed enemy hits and kills up to a maximum of 50% super energy. What's peculiar to me about this is with Raiju's harness equipped, Gathering Storm jolts enemies, which arc debuffs enemies, which means when we were throwing it at the big dude, the Machine Priest, theoretically, that initial hit should jolt the Machine Priest, the tanky enemy, and then any subsequent lightning hits should theoretically count as arc debuffed enemy hits and give us some energy refund. I feel like the words that I'm reading and what's going on in the gameplay is not necessarily lining up completely. So I wonder if this is just like kind of bugged to a certain degree, or if it's not really working as intended. I'm thinking of another angle too, now that I'm looking at things, in terms of the Spark of Beacons. While you are amplified, your arc special or heavy ammo weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. What if we went with something like the Indebted Kindness rocket sidearm? Do it with bad juju and watch the magic happen. I think there is a such thing as too much super energy. So I think what we were missing is I was under the assumption that Raiju's harness was allowing Gathering Storm to jolt targets during the constant lightning strikes that spewed out of it after it landed, which is not the case. It's only one big lightning strike on its initial landing. What we need to do is we need to use either our pulse grenade or our disorienting blow or our ascension to debuff enemies either before or after our Gathering Storm lands. And then the subsequent follow-up lightning strikes will then be hitting arc debuff targets and giving us significantly increased super energy. So I'm gonna wait until this guy's shield gets popped. And then see, the idea here is jolt, debuff him. Okay. So we got like a quarterback right there. We got like a Joe Burrow's worth of super energy back. Get it? Because it's a quarterback.
Why are you the way that you are?
I want to start using the delirium a little bit to feel that like blinding explosion. So we're amplified right now, heavy ammo kill. Like this angle would be really good for more endgame content as well, because of the crowd control that you get from blinding literally everything with the exception of champions and bosses. Like nothing's gonna be shooting back at you. We're gonna hit that so we get amplified. Okay, so punch him. Okay, so right there, 50% of our super back. So that does seem to be the trick. You want to find like tanky enemies or a big group of enemies, arc debuff them with either the disorienting blow punch, volt shot on your weapon. Look how quickly we're getting our super back. It's nearly instant at this point. But as I was saying, arc debuff them with ascension, the grenade, disorienting blow punch, anything. And then you arc debuff them, and then you chuck the super at them. I think the Barrier Colossus died before my super hit him, which is why I didn't get any refund there. We're gonna try hitting this boss with a jolt. Actually, we'll just try hitting those enemies with the jolt. Okay, so that gave us literally no super refund energy back, and pretty much all of those enemies were arc debuffed. So I don't really know. If there is one thing it is inconsistent, that's for sure. Or I'm just genuinely not, like, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. I feel like usually I can figure this stuff out, but given that it feels inconsistent and the community notes on the exotics say that it's inconsistent, very well could just be inconsistent. Kill a bunch of these enemies, jolt all those guys. I mean, the Ascension's up like 24/7. And he's toast. So, will it build? Absolutely, yes. I mean, the entire point of this build is cast as many Gathering Storms as humanly possible, jolt as many enemies as humanly possible, blind as many enemies as humanly possible. It feels pretty good, and honestly, this is one of those builds where I think this could totally work in lower end content. It could totally work in raids, it could totally work in dungeons, and I could honestly think it could work in Grandmaster Nightfalls as well. You might have to play a little bit more careful. Jolt in and of itself is still just a very good debuff to universally apply to everything, as well as arc blind. Even if you're not killing stuff quite as quickly and getting as much super energy, you have everything permanently jolted so it takes extra damage, and everything permanently blinded so it can't shoot back. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe so you can catch the next episode. And if you have an idea for a build that you would like featured in one of these videos, please be sure to submit it in the Will It Build channel in my Discord server, linked in the description below. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.